The wind howled like a wounded thing across the valley, swallowing every sound except the groan of snow under hooves. Eli Carter leaned low over his horse's neck, eyes narrowed against the white blur ahead. He'd lived through 40 winters out here, but this one carried a different kind of silence, one that pressed against his chest like memory. He was only meant to check the north fence before nightfall, yet the blizzard came fast, smothering the horizon until the world became a single, shifting sheet of white. He might have turned back, but something, perhaps instinct, perhaps guilt, pushed him forward. The wind carried a sound that didn't belong to the storm, faint, high, human. He stopped, heart pounding. There was again a cry swallowed and returned by the wind. Eli swung down, boots sinking into knee-deep snow, and followed the sound until a shadow took shape among the drifts. A small figure crouched beside a fallen mare, both half buried in frost. The child's hands clutched the animal's mane, her face streaked with frozen tears. "Hey!" Eli said softly, his voice rough from disuse. "You're all right now." She flinched but didn't run. The mare's side shuddered. She was alive, barely. Eli stripped off his coat and wrapped it around the girl. She was light as a ghost, shaking so hard he could feel it through the fabric. "What's your name?" he asked. No answer. Her lips moved once. He caught a single word, cracked and faint. "Promise." He swallowed hard. The word hit something buried deep. Years ago, another voice had said it, his wife's, before the mountain storm that took her. "Promise you won't stop helping." He hadn't kept it. Not until now. "I've got you," he murmured. "We'll get you both home." The mare stirred weakly when he tried to move her. Eli loosened his scarf and tied it around the halter, coaxing gently until she managed to rise on trembling legs. The girl reached out, small fingers brushing the horse's muzzle. "She's tired," she whispered. Her voice, fragile but alive, broke the silence like dawn through fog. "I know," he said. "So am I. Let's move before the storm decides we don't belong here." He lifted the girl onto his saddle, then guided the mare by rope through the deepening snow. The wind clawed at them, erasing their tracks as soon as they formed. Still, he pressed on, the girl leaning against his chest, the mare stumbling but following. Hours later, through a veil of white, the outline of his ranch emerged, dim lights in the dark. Relief caught in his throat, sharp and sudden. Behind him, the mare stumbled again, nearly falling. Eli turned, hand steady on her neck. "Almost there," he whispered. The child stirred faintly, her breath warm against his collar. "You promised," she murmured. He looked toward the faint glow of home. "And I'll keep it." The storm raged through the night, battering the old ranch house until the walls groaned like an exhausted beast. Inside, firelight painted everything in shades of amber and shadow. Eli crouched near the hearth, stirring the flames higher while the girl slept beneath a quilt too big for a frame. Her hair clung to her face, thawing slowly, revealing streaks of dirt and a faint bruise on her temple. She looked small enough to vanish if he blinked. He rose to check the mare again. The barn smelled of hay and damp wool, the kind of living warmth that made winter bearable. The horse stood trembling but upright, sides heaving. Eli rubbed her neck with a burlap cloth until the shiver eased. "You've done your part," he whispered. "Rest now." The mare blinked at him with eyes that seemed almost human in their weariness. Back inside, the girl stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, gray, wary, too old for her age. "Where's Willow?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Your mare's alive," he said, tough as they come. She nodded, staring into the fire. "Mama said she'd find the ridge. Said that's where we'd be safe." Her fingers picked at the edge of the quilt, restless, searching for something familiar. Eli poured a bit of broth into a cup and handed it to her. "You were headed somewhere?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "Don't remember." The lie was soft but certain. He didn't press. He recognized the look, someone guarding what little they had left. He leaned back in his chair, the crackle wood filling the quiet. Outside, wind scraped against the windows, trying to get in. For years, he'd welcomed that noise. It drowned the voice that reminded him of what he'd lost. Now, for the first time, the silence between gusts felt heavier than the storm. The girl's hand trembled as she lifted the cup. A thin silver chain slipped from her sleeve, glinting in the firelight. A small locket hung from it. She noticed his gaze and tucked it quickly beneath the blanket. "Mama's," she said, her chin lifting in defiance. He nodded. "Looks special." She said it would keep her close. Her voice cracked, and she pressed her lips together to stop the tremor. Eli turned back to the fire, pretending not to notice. He knew grief's shape too well, the way it made people small and silent. He poked at the coals, sending up sparks that vanished before reaching the chimney. "Storm's easing," he said after a while. "Come morning, we'll see what the road looks like." The girl's eyes drifted shut again, exhaustion finally winning. He watched her breathing steady, the locket glinting once more in the flicker of light. Outside, the wind began to fade. For the first time in years, Eli whispered a quiet prayer, not for himself, but for the two souls sleeping under his roof. Morning broke pale and fragile, the kind of light that made the world seem uncertain. Snow still blanketed the land, though the wind had quieted to a whisper. Eli stood by the window, coffee steaming in his hand, watching breath clouds rise from barn. The girl, Mare, he'd finally coaxed her name from her, sat at the table, her small hands cupped around a chipped mug. The fire had burned low, and the silence between them felt oddly companionable. "You remember where your mama was taking you?" Eli asked gently. She shook her head, eyes fixed on the swirling steam. "Just away." She said Grandpa had land past the ridge. That name lodged in him, a place he knew, though miles away through rough country. He considered the roads, the weather, the old bridge that might already be gone. "That's a hard ride," he said quietly. "I can walk," she replied, defiant. Eli smiled faintly. "You already did. Almost too far." A soft sound drifted from outside, the mare stirring. Mara's face lit up, the first real spark of life he'd seen there. They bundled up and crossed the yard, snow crunching under their boots. The barn smelled of hay and thawing leather. Willow nickered when they entered, her head rising weakly. Mara ran to her side, pressing her cheek against the mare's neck. "She wants to go," the girl murmured. "She needs to heal first," Eli said. "Like you." She turned toward him then, studying him as though measuring the truth in his face. "You talk like you know." "I do." His gaze lingered on the old saddle hanging from the beam, his wife's. "Some things take longer than you think." Later, while feeding the stove, Eli caught the faint crackle of the radio. The voice was distant but clear enough. A missing child reported after her mother's car was found wrecked outside the next county. Mara stiffened, listening. "That's her," she whispered. "Mama." Eli switched the dial off, the room falling still again. "They'll be looking," he said softly. "We'll get you to them." Snow began falling again, slow and deliberate, like the sky couldn't decide whether to relent or hold on. Eli packed what little supplies he had, a blanket, rope, and oats for the mare. Mara helped, her movements careful but sure. When she slipped on her mittens, he noticed the small cuts on her knuckles, red against the pale wool. "You don't have to come," she said suddenly. "You could tell them where I am." He looked at her then, really looked. "I made a promise," he said simply. By noon, the mare was harnessed to the wagon, breath steaming in the cold air. Mara climbed up beside him, holding the reins with both hands. The wind had softened, but the sky loomed heavy with new snow. Eli glanced at her, then toward the ridge half lost in mist. "Let's bring you home," he said, and flicked the reins toward the waiting road. The journey through the valley was slow, the world reduced to shades of white and breath. The wagon wheels creaked over crusted snow, each turn a battle against the cold that clung like a living thing. Mara sat close beside Eli, her small hands buried in her sleeves, eyes fixed on the faint trail ahead. Willow trudged on, head low, steam rising from her nostrils. The ridge seemed to retreat with every mile, a mirage the storm refused to surrender. Eli felt his strength wane, the ache in his shoulders deepening. Yet when Mara glanced up at him, her face pale but determined, something steadied inside him. "Almost there," he murmured, though the words were more prayer than promise. The wind rose again, scattering flakes like ash. Visibility dropped until the world became nothing but motion and sound, hoofbeats, breath, and the faint creak of rope. Hours blurred. When the mare stumbled, Eli leapt down, his knees sinking into snow. He coaxed her forward, whispering the same calm words he once used for frightened cattle. Behind him, Mara watched in silence, her fingers gripping the wagon's edge. When Willow finally regained her footing, Eli caught the girl's faint smile, fragile as sunlight. By late afternoon, the storm broke. A pale stripe of sky opened above the ridge, glowing faintly gold. In that fragile light, a thin column of smoke appeared on the horizon. Mara gasped. "That's him," she said. "Grandpa's place." Her voice trembled between hope and disbelief. Eli followed her gaze, heart tightening. He pushed the mare onward, ignoring the sting of cold in his chest. The last hill was steep, the snow deeper. Halfway up, the wagons were caught on a buried rock. He heaved, muscles screaming, until it broke free. Mara jumped down a hill, boots slipping, cheeks flushed with cold. Together, they pushed until the wagon crested the rise. The cabin below was small but alive, lamplight glowing the window, smoke curling from a chimney. A man burst from the door, stumbling through snow toward them. Mara ran, her cry cutting through the air like a bell. Eli watched the reunion in silence, his breath fogging in the fading light. The older man knelt, gathering the child into his arms, his shoulders shaking with relief. When they finally approached, gratitude filled his eyes. "You brought her back," he said, voice rough. Eli only nodded, too tired for words. Later, when the mare was stable and the girl safe by the fire, Eli stood outside alone. The storm had passed. Snow glittered beneath the sky, clearing the stars. From inside came laughter, soft, certain, alive. He hadn't heard that sound in years. He tipped his hat, breath curling upward. "Promise kept," he whispered. The words vanished into the quiet, carried somewhere beyond the ridge. If this story touched you, subscribe or share where you're watching from. These stories remind us that even in the coldest storms, someone always keeps their promise.